Learning objectives. At the end of the lecture, students should be able to describe the components of fetal circulation, describe the location of foramen ovale, describe the ductus arteriosus, explain the path of fetal circulation, explain the changes in circulation after birth, and to discuss the problems with persistence of fetal component circulation after birth, that is patent ductus arteriosus and patent foramen ovale. So before starting with the topic that is fetal circulation, I like to introduce few terms. First of all, we'll discuss what is fetus. Fetus is basically the term which is used for a prenatal mammal, that is the mammal which is about to be born or in the process of formation. So a prenatal mammal between its embryonic period and its birth, that is when that mammal is between its embryonic period and up till its birth, the term is referred to as the fetus. Then we use the word placenta. Now, what is placenta? Placenta is the organ in human mother which is responsible for the supplying of oxygen and nutritive material to the fetus, and also for the removal of carbon dioxide and the nitrogen waste out of the fetus. Then there is another term which is the umbilical cord. So what is an umbilical cord? It is basically a flexible cord-like structure containing blood vessels and attaching a human to the placenta, responsible for the supplying and elimination of carbon dioxide and oxygen. So here we have discussed three definitions, that is, first of all, we have discussed what is fetus. Fetus is a state of a prenatal mammal, that is a mammal which is about to be born or in the process of being born between the embryonic state and up till its birth. Then we have discussed the word placenta. What is placenta? Placenta is basically a structure which is present within the mother, and it supplies oxygen and nutrients to the fetus and also is responsible for the elimination of the nitrogenous waste. Then we have discussed the umbilical cord. Now, umbilical cord is basically the connection between the fetus and the placenta, and it is this umbilical cord which contain the blood vessels, which we'll discuss later. And so since it's a connection between the fetus and the placenta, it is responsible for the supplying and elimination of the carbon dioxide and oxygen. So these are the three terms which we have discussed up till now. That is what is fetus, then we have discussed placenta, and finally the umbilical cord. Now, coming to our topic, that is fetal circulation. What is fetal circulation? Fetal circulation is basically the circulation of the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood within the fetus. In addition to it, also the circulation of nutritive material will come under the heading of the fetal circulation. So, the circulation of the oxygenated, deoxygenated blood and the nutritive material in the fetus is termed as fetal circulation. Now, how does the fetal circulatory system work? Here I give you a brief overview regarding our topic, how this system works. Actually, what happens is that during pregnancy, the fetal circulatory system works differently than after birth. The fetus is connected to the umbilical cord to the placenta, as we have discussed before. And what is placenta? It is basically the organ that develops and implants in mother's uterus during pregnancy. Then through the blood vessels in the umbilical cord, the fetus receives all the necessary nutrition, oxygen, and life support from the mother through the placenta. And waste products and carbon dioxide from the fetus are sent back through the umbilical cord and placenta to the mother's circulation, which is to be eliminated. So in short, it is basically the previous picture which I have shown you, in which the fetus is attached to the placenta through the umbilical cord, and this is the fetal circulation. Basically the fetus gets the nutrition and oxygen from the placenta through the umbilical cord, and the elimination of waste products will be transported from the fetus to the mother's circulation, and which is later on to be eliminated, and this is all the fetal circulation. So we are continuously using the term blood vessels in fetus. What are those blood vessels in the fetus? Actually, the blood vessels responsible for fetal circulation are single umbilical vein and the paired umbilical arteries. Now you can see in the picture, this is the umbilical cord, and the umbilical cord contain the blood vessels, and this is the, what is this? This is the umbilical vein, and these are two the umbilical arteries. So the umbilical cord contains a single umbilical vein and a paired umbilical arteries. Now you can see that this is the baby in the womb, that is in the uterus, and baby is connected to the placenta through the umbilical cord, and this umbilical cord basically contains the umbilical vessels, that is a single umbilical vein and a paired umbilical arteries. Now, umbilical vein, as you have been learning throughout your previous years, that basically vein carries deoxygenated blood, but here in case of umbilical vein, it carries basically the oxygenated blood from the placenta to the growing fetus. Now, this is the placenta. I think you should be familiar with the picture, because that's why I'm repeating the same picture on and on, so that you would be familiar with the big picture. So this is the placenta, and this is the umbilical cord containing the umbilical vessels. So when we are discussing about the umbilical vein, see the umbilical vein, the color of the umbilical vein is red because it carries the oxygenated blood. And from where does this oxygenated blood comes? This oxygenated blood comes from the placenta to the growing fetus. The blood pressure inside the umbilical vein is approximately 20 millimeter hydrogyrum. The umbilical arteries, there are paired umbilical arteries. See the umbilical arteries, they are paired umbilical arteries found in the pelvic and the abdominal regions of the fetus, which extends into the umbilical cord. It supplies deoxygenated blood from the fetus to the placenta. They surround the urinary bladder and then carry all the deoxygenated blood out of the fetus. Now, there are shunts which are involved in the fetal circulation. There are three shunts which is present in the fetus. They are the foramen ovale, ductus arteriosus, and the ductus venosus. Now, if you could see in the picture, this is the placenta, this is the umbilical vein, this is umbilical vein. And now you can see that here is the foramen ovale. Then we have another shunt which is called as ductus arteriosus. Now, what is the purpose of this shunt? Why nature has made these shunts? These shunts are made just to skip few structures of the body, like the lungs and the liver, because at this stage the lungs and liver are not fully developed. So these structures have been made to bypass the blood going through the liver and the lungs. So, what is the purpose of the shunts? Shunts are basically made to, they are obviously they are natural. They are naturally made by the nature to avoid the passage of lungs to specific structures, that is the lungs and the liver. And why to avoid the passage towards the lung and the liver? Because these structures are not fully developed. And how many shunts are there in fetal circulation? There are three shunts. First of all, we have the foramen ovale. This is the foramen ovale. Then we have the ductus arteriosus, and the third shunt would be the ductus venosus. So there are three shunts in the fetal circulation. So starting with the ductus venosus. See, this is the ductus venosus. The ductus venosus shunts the portion of the umbilical vein blood flow directly into the inferior vena cava, allows oxygenated blood from the placenta to bypass the liver. Now, what happened is that the oxygenated blood have been coming from the placenta. You all know that, we have discussed this, and from the placenta the oxygenated blood is being passed to the umbilical vein. Now, from the umbilical vein, this oxygenated blood is split into two halves. That is, half of the half of the blood from the umbilical vein would pass into the ductus venosus. See, this is ductus venosus, and what is basically the ductus venosus? Ductus venosus is a vessel which connects the inferior vena cava with the umbilical vein. See, this is the inferior vena cava and this is the umbilical vein, and the inferior vena cava and the umbilical vein are connected by the ductus venosus. So when the blood enters the umbilical vein from the placenta, and the blood here is oxygenated, so from the umbilical vein, the blood will split into two halves. That is, the one portion of the blood would pass into the ductus venosus and will then travel into the inferior vena cava. Once inside the ductus venosus, obviously this oxygenated blood would bypass the liver. That is, it won't enter into the liver, but the remaining half of the blood from the umbilical vein would enter into the liver. Now, how it happens, we'll discuss it later on. Now, the second shunt would be the ductus arteriosus. Now, you can see in the picture, this is actually the ductus arteriosus. It connects the pulmonary artery to the proximal descending aorta. This is the descending aorta, and this is the ductus arteriosus, which is connecting the pulmonary artery to the descending aorta. So ductus venosus, it is actually connecting the umbilical vein with the inferior vena cava, and ductus arteriosus is connecting the pulmonary artery with the proximal part of the descending aorta. It allows most of the blood from the right ventricle to bypass the fetus fluid filled non-functioning lungs. Obviously, so the blood will directly pass into the aorta instead of passing into the lungs. Then we have the third shunt, which is called as the foramen ovale. See, this is the foramen ovale, that is, it lies between the right atrium and the left atrium. It allows the blood to enter the left atrium from the right atrium. That is right to left shunt. What type? Because they usually ask these things, that what type of shunt is the foramen ovale? It is right to left shunt, because the blood from the right atrium will then travel into the left atrium. So up till now we have discussed that there are three shunts. First of all, we have ductus venosus. Ductus venosus is a shunt which lies between the inferior vena cava and the umbilical vein. Basically, it connects the umbilical vein and the inferior vena cava, bypassing the liver, because the liver is up till now is not that fully developed. It can't bear the burden of so much high pressure blood, because we have discussed that the pressure in the umbilical vein is too high. Then there is another shunt which is called as the foramen ovale, which lies between the right atrium and the left atrium, thus bypassing the lungs. The third shunt would be the ductus arteriosus. This shunt lies between the pulmonary artery and the proximal part of the descending aorta. So these are the three shunts which works in the fetal circulation. Now, what are the steps of fetal circulation? Now, more or less, you know the sequence. Now, just to have a review regarding these steps, a now we will gonna organize these things. Okay, first of all is the highly oxygenated nutrient-rich blood returns under high pressure from the placenta in the umbilical vein. You all know that high pressure oxygenated blood would come into the umbilical vein from the placenta. Then on approaching the liver, half of the blood passes directly into the ductus venosus, a fetal vessel connecting the umbilical vein to the inferior vena cava. Consequently, this blood bypasses the liver. Now, we have discussed that from the umbilical vein, the blood will split into two halves. That is, half of the blood would enter into the ductus venosus. And what is ductus venosus? It is basically a vessel which connects the inferior vena cava with the umbilical vein. Thus, the blood would bypass the liver. Whereas the other half of the blood in the umbilical vein which flows in the sinusoids of the liver and enter the inferior vena cava through the hepatic vein. So the blood here at the liver would split into two halves, and it would disperse the burden of the liver, because obviously liver needs the blood to grow. But if all of the blood, if there would be no shunt and all blood would come to the liver, obviously it hasn't been grown up, so it got collapsed. So, what the nature has made is that at the liver, the ductus venosus has been formed, and it is basically a shunt. So, the blood from the umbilical vein would split into two halves. Half of the blood would enter into the liver through to the sinusoids of the liver, and then enter into the inferior vena cava with the through the hepatic vein, and the remaining half of the blood from the umbilical vein would directly enter into the inferior vena cava through the ductus venosus, thus bypassing the liver. So ultimately the blood from the umbilical vein would enter into the inferior vena cava. But here, and from the inferior vena cava, the blood would enter into the right atrium of the heart. But since in the inferior vena cava, the blood coming from the umbilical vein is purely oxygenated blood, but despite of the blood coming from the umbilical vein, inferior vena cava also receives poorly oxygenated blood from the lower limb, abdomen, and pelvis. So the blood which now enter into the right atrium is not that oxygenated, or it does not have that high oxygen content as it was previously had in the umbilical vein, because umbilical vein has purely oxygenated blood and it is coming from the simply from the placenta. But once the blood entered the inferior vena cava from the ductus venosus or from the hepatic veins, it get mixed with the blood coming from different sources in the vena cava, because inferior vena cava receives blood from different sources, that is from the lower limb, abdomen, and pelvis, and blood coming from there is poorly oxygenated. So when this blood get mixed with the umbilical vein blood, and it would enter into the right atrium. So at the right atrium does not have a we can say a good oxygenated blood. It has a poorly oxygenated blood, because all the blood has been mixed up here in the inferior vena cava, and this mixed blood would now enter the right atrium. Then most blood from the inferior vena cava is directed by the crista dividens, inferior border of the septum secundum, through the oval foramen into the left atrium. Now, most of the blood would directly enter into the left atrium through the foramen ovale. And from the left atrium, the blood then passes to the left ventricle and leaves through the ascending aorta. Approximately 10% of blood from the ascending aorta enters the descending aorta, and among those 10% of the blood, 65% of the blood in the descending aorta passes into the umbilical arteries and is returned to the placenta for reoxygenation, and the remaining 35% of the blood in the descending aorta supplies the viscera and the inferior part of the body. Now you get my point that the blood here from the left ventricle would enter the blood here from the left ventricle. From the right atrium, the blood would pass into the left atrium through the foramen ovale. Then from the left atrium, blood would pass into the left ventricle through the and then leaves through the ascending aorta. See, then leaves through the ascending aorta, and 10% of the blood from the ascending aorta will pass into the descending aorta, and the blood which has been passed into the descending aorta, among that blood 65% of the blood will then return back to the placenta for reoxygenation, whereas the 35% blood in the descending aorta supplies the viscera and the inferior part of the body. The arteries to the neck, heart, lung, the arteries to the heart, neck, head, and upper limbs receive. So, the ascending aorta will supply the well oxygenated blood to the arteries of the heart, head and neck, and upper limbs. And liver, you all know that umbilical vein is supplying well oxygenated blood to the liver. The small amount of well oxygenated blood from the inferior vena cava does not that does from the inferior vena cava in the right atrium, that does not enter the foramen ovale, mixes with the poorly oxygenated blood from the superior vena cava and coronary sinus and passes into the right ventricle. This blood with the medium oxygen content leaves through this blood with medium oxygen content leaves through the pulmonary trunk. Now, the remaining half of the obviously all the blood from the right atrium won't pass through the left atrium. So the remaining blood, the blood which has been left out in the right atrium would then passes to the right ventricle, and this blood with a medium oxygen content leaves through the pulmonary trunk. Now you can see that this is the right ventricle, and this then the blood here would move through the pulmonary trunk. Now, what happens to the circulatory changes which occurs after birth? The placenta is replaced by lungs as the organ of respiratory exchange. After birth, now up till birth, it is basically the placenta which is responsible for the respiratory exchange. But once the birth occurs, now the lungs are fully matured and it is responsible for the respiratory exchange. The lungs and pulmonary vessels expand, thereby significantly lowering the resistance to blood flow. Subsequently, the pressure in the pulmonary artery and the right side of the heart is decreased. The pressure of the left side of the heart increases. The increasing pressure of the blood in the left side of the heart decreases the vascular resistance of the lungs. Therefore, the blood now enters the lungs as the respiratory exchange. What happens is that the pressure would increase in the left side of the heart, and when the pressure would increase in the left side of the heart, it decreases the resistance, the vascular resistance of the lungs, the resistance which have been provided by the lungs. So it decreases the resistance. So now blood would enter into the lungs as a respiratory exchange. So what thing happened? First of all, the placenta is replaced by lungs. The lungs and pulmonary vessels would expand, thereby significantly lowering the resistance to blood flow. Once they get expand, now just imagine it. Once the lungs and the pulmonary vessels got expanded, obviously the resistance would automatically abandon. And then subsequently, the pressure in the pulmonary artery and the right side of the heart is decreased. The pressure of the left side of the heart increases, and increasing pressure of the blood in the left side of the heart would decrease the vascular resistance of the lungs. And once this resistance decreases, the blood now enters the lung and acts as a structure for the respiratory exchange. Now, After birth, the three shunts would automatically close down. First of all, closure of the ductus venosus. Functional closure occurs within the minutes of birth. That is, the ductus venosus will stop functioning within minutes of birth. Within the minutes of birth, it stops working. But the structural closure, that is the opening, would occur. The structural closure occurs within 3 to 7 days. After it closes, the remnant is known as ligamentum venosum. Now, you should remember that what is the remnant of the closure of ductus venosus? It is basically the ligamentum venosum. See, this is the ligamentum venosum. This is the ligamentum venosum, which is the remnant of the basically the after the closure of the the remnant of the ductus venosus is basically the ligamentum venosum, and it is present on the back side of the liver. Then closure of ductus arteriosus. Closure of ductus arteriosus is by smooth muscle contraction. It is further replaced by fibrous tissue called ligamentum arteriosum. At birth, opposite direction of blood flow from aorta to pulmonary artery supplies more oxygenated blood than before. Closure of the foramen ovale. Before birth, the foramen ovale allows most of the oxygenated blood entering the right atrium from the inferior vena cava to pass into the left atrium. It closes at birth due to decreased flow from placenta and inferior vena cava to hold foramen open. So obviously the foramen ovale also would get closed after birth. More importantly, because of increased pulmonary blood flow and pulmonary venous return to left heart, causing the pressure in the left atrium to be higher than in the right atrium. This increased left atrial pressure then closes the foramen ovale against the septum secundum between the right and the left atrium. The output from the right ventricle now flows entirely into the pulmonary circulation. Now, this thing is very important, that the output from the left ventricle now flows entirely into the pulmonary circulation. Now, aeration of the lungs at birth is associated with three factors. Now, first of all, decrease in pulmonary vascular resistance. Obviously, the pulmonary vascular resistance has been decreased, so blood flows within the lungs, helping it to be as a respiratory exchange area. Then, marked increase in pulmonary blood flow. Obviously, when the resistance would be decreased, the blood flow would obviously increase. Progressive thinning of the walls Progressive thinning of the walls of the pulmonary arteries. The walls of the pulmonary arteries got thin. So the aeration of the lungs at birth is associated with three factors. First of all, the decrease in pulmonary vascular resistance. Then second would be the increase in the pulmonary blood flow. And third would be the thinning of the walls of the pulmonary arteries. Then oxygen in fetal circulation is 15 to 20 millimeter hydrogyrum. Oxygen after birth increases to 100 millimeter hydrogyrum. The right ventricular wall is thicker in fetal circulation, but the left ventricular wall gets thicker by the end of the first month after birth. Now, this is very important, that during fetal life, the right ventricular wall is thicker because it is working more as compared to the left ventricle. But once birth occurs, the left ventricular wall now since it's working harder, so the left ventricular wall gets thicker by the end of the first month after birth. Now, this is all about the fetal circulation. We have discussed the vessels, we have discussed the connection. Then we have discussed the steps which occurs in the fetal circulation, and then we have discussed what are the changes which occurs when birth occurs, apart from the fetal life, what changes would occurs after birth. Then we have discussed the factors which are responsible for the aeration of lungs. And now there are two pathologies, that what happened if the ductus, and finally obviously after birth these shunts got closed. But what happens if the shunt remains open? The condition, if the patent means open, so if the ductus arteriosus remains open, the condition is called as patent ductus arteriosus. Is a persistent opening between the two major vessels leading from the heart. A small patent ductus arteriosus often doesn't cause problems and might never need treatment. However, a large patent ductus arteriosus, if left untreated, can allow poorly oxygenated blood to flow in the wrong direction, weakening the heart muscle and causing heart failure and other complications. Now, treatment options for a patent ductus arteriosus include monitoring, medications, and closure by cardiac catheterization or surgery. The second pathology would be if the foramen ovale remains open. The condition is called as patent foramen ovale. Patent foramen ovale PFO is a hole between the left and the right atria, upper chambers of the heart. This hole exists in everyone before birth, but most often closes shortly after being born. It is the condition when the hole fails to close naturally after a baby is born. So this is all about the fetal circulation, and we have discussed the two pathologies relating to it. Thank you.